And on to the final class in the set review, the Warrior. Now, Warrior has definitely one of the weirdest concoctions of cards where they kind of all go in different directions and none of them are really miserably bad. Actually, there's a couple which just aren't that good, but they're all fairly arguable in terms of playability. The first one is Crush. Crush is 7 mana, epic. Not a good start. Destroy a minion. If you have a damaged minion, this spell costs 3. So it costs 4 less. Now, at first I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my god, it costs 3. And then I'm like, wait a second, Hex in Shaman and also Battle Rage has been a card that's always been good on paper, but every single time you put it in your deck, it's never good.
Right.
So,
So the
meh.
question is, if you're a warrior, how often do you have a damage minion on the board? Um, Even if you do have a damage minion on the board, is this card going to be that much better than um, Shield Slam and Execute? Are you going to want to play this card as well as those cards? I think the benefit of Crush is that you can play it in a deck that can take advantage of being able to destroy me for 3 mana.
Hmm.
That where maybe the kind of situational nature of Shield Slam and Execute aren't ideal, like kind of a more mid-rangey board controlish deck. Um, it's more likely to have minions out, and in that deck, Crush is going to be really good. In Control Warrior, maybe not as
I don't
good,
like it
especially
in
as you have
Control
to
Warrior.
kind of it kind of shares a slot with Bouncing Blade.
Yeah,
And
Control
yeah,
Warrior has access to Execute, Shield Slam, Bouncing Blade, weapons. It just seems overkill.
yeah. Um, I mean, if you play this with 7 mana, it's not the worst thing in the world if you kill a Ragnaros, but you're not developing anything, so they're just going to play more stuff, and it's going to be stuck in your hand a reasonable percentage of the time.
I mean, when it's active, it's 2 mana better than Assassinate, but when it's not active, it's 2 mana worse, and getting it active is probably harder than it looks. So I'm not sure I like Crush. We'll have to see just how good it is, but I'm on the side of the fence where it's not that good.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
but
like I said, it's not that great in Control Warrior, but there might be a deck that is good.
And in Arena, it's pickable, it's removal. Removal's fine, because it doesn't matter how much mana it costs. If it kills their force tank, which is completely indestructible, then it's fine. But anyway, Shieldmaiden, 6 mana, 5/5. Battlecry, gain 5 armor. Now this gets immediately compared to Guardian of Kings. 1 less mana, 1 less health, 1 less health.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
sounded better in my head.
so this card is a million times better than Guardian of Kings, because 1 less mana is quite important. It means that you can play it a bit earlier against aggro. It means that if you're at 30 health, it's not completely useless because you gain the armor, and it has a synergy with Shield Slam. Um, this is kind of a quite a strong card. It's the dreamed card that you want to have in your deck to play against like a hunter because it heals you. Uh, while at the same time putting a body on the board to kind of deal with the stuff that they're playing at that point in the game. Um, which is great. Like, and because if you play a Sylvanas on turn 6 against a hunter, they're just like, play a freezing trap and ignore it. Um,
I mean, they'll do that with Shieldmaiden as well. But
well,
at
yeah, but
least
the
you got the
Shieldman
5
already gains
mana
you 5 armor, and
and
then you
5
can kind
armor,
of
yeah.
bounce it back to your hand again, gain the 5 armor
Although,
again.
on the negative side of things,
Yeah, there isn't
Shield.
definitely a negative side of things.
There's a couple negatives on this. I mean, I'm like over time I've been kind of going closer towards the fence, but I'm not at a point where I'm still like, oh, this is good because there's a couple of problems with this. The first one is that 5/6 in late game scenarios, Guardian of Kings first of all was one off because you can't afford to run two, but Guardian of Kings 5/6 in control mirrors is surprisingly more relevant than 5/5. I mean, 5/5 dies to Death Bite, Loatheb, it dies to a lot more removal. So it's worth trading. However, it costs less, which makes it better against aggro, but then did Warrior need that much? Like, this is the better question. Do you need to build your Warrior deck in such a way that makes it actually better than it already is at beating aggro decks, whereas you're actually playing Shieldmaiden over something like Sylvanas or Toshli, which would be way stronger in control
Yeah,
manners.
I mean, yeah, you're probably I mean, you're not going to cut Sylvanas this card because Sylvanas is just too good. But yeah, it's in the incredibly competitive 6-drop slot. You've got Can and Black Knight and some of the new 6-drops
There's
which are
new
good.
ones, there's Toshli,
Iron
and then,
Juggernaut.
yeah, there's Iron Juggernaut, there's even Siege Engine, like similar stats, like out of the
Um,
new stuff. So,
so yeah, it's an okay card. It's great in an aggro meta game. It will hurt your control matchups, so it depends on like how relevant that is. But it's a
bad
really strong
against
card. This,
Priest. Shadowware Beth.
um, you know, I'm quietly hopeful that maybe this is the excuse to cut Armor Smith that I've always been hoping to get. Uh, and maybe the extra life from this card means you can play Gore Howl and it won't be quite as bad.
The problem with the logic of cutting Armorsmith is, like, I know where the logic comes from is that Armorsmith is abysmally bad against Priest, but then if you have Shield Maiden in your deck, you're playing it to make your aggro matchups better, and then Armorsmith is like the best card in the deck against aggro.
Yeah, this is true.
So
Um,
they fulfill the same roles at completely different stages in the game. So I've got a feeling Shield Maiden, if there were less really good 6-drops, it would see a lot more play. Kind of like, it almost feels like it's in the same situation as Azure Drake was. It would see
yeah, where
way
it's
more
really,
play if the slot was less competitive, like it used to be.
yeah, I think that's fair.
We'll have to see. I don't know how
So
much
it's
play this is going to see, but we'll have
it's
to see.
definitely a meta game call, but this is going to see some play definitely.
Well, yeah, it's a metagame call is the point. It's a Guardian of Kings. It's a metagame call, but we'll have to see. I mean, for all we know, Warrior Control is not going to be the best Warrior deck. Because they've got a lot of pretty ridiculous, like,
Well,
tempo cards on the low end of things here.
I think Control is always going to be in contention.
It's
Anyway.
always going to be a thing, but yeah. Anyway, on to Iron Juggernaut. Now, this is what you play in the metagame where Shield Maiden is absolutely retardedly bad. Because Iron Juggernaut is a 6-mana 6/5 with, and I'm going to read it off because I could not make this up. Mech, Battlecry, shuffle a mine into your opponent's deck. When drawn, it explodes for 10 damage. Now, this is down here somewhere. There it is. Now, the mine is called the Burrowing Mine, and when you draw it, it explodes, you take 10 damage, and you draw a card. So that's a thing.
Right.
Now, I wonder
So
if that works with, like, some weird contrivance where somehow you're playing as a rogue, and they have, like, a Gallywix on the board.
I don't think so. Um, I don't think spell gets played. But
If it does, that's just funny, because you just give it to them and then they just take 10.
So Iron Juggernaut. Yeah. So the dream scenario is you kind of Alexstrasza your opponent, and you play the Iron Juggernaut. They draw the mine.
And
They
they
get down
die.
to 5. And they die. Yeah.
There's a couple arguments with this. The first one is that, alright, basically, the way I see this card is that a lot of people say it's absolutely stupidly good. I don't agree with that. However, I think in certain metagames, like if you're in a control metagame where you play against a lot of priests, which, let's be honest, goes to fatigue a reasonable amount of the time, Iron Juggernaut basically means that you win Fatigue Wars. It's a 6-mana 6/5, it's a threat, and you win Fatigue Wars. The problem is, against aggro or mid-rangey metagames where the chances of them drawing the mine is actually pretty low, it's basically just a fire elemental without the battle cry.
Yeah. So in order for this card to be good, you have to play it. Then they have to draw the mine, and if the game ends like on turn 10 or 11, then their chance of drawing the mine are actually fairly low. And then the 10 damage has to decide the game. And if that's not the case, then you just play the 6-mana 6/5, which is
Not fantastic.
pretty awful, especially against aggro.
And the battle cry doesn't actually do, like, it doesn't actually affect the board at all. So
Right.
you actually do lose a lot of tempo if this gets sapped, for example. It's like, yay, I doubled the chances of him drawing the mine. So it's now 2 out of 20. No, it'd be 2 out of
Right.
21 or something at that point. But anyway, so the point is that it's still 6-mana 6/5 doesn't affect the board when you play it. So at that point it's going directly into competition with Sylvanas, Cairn, Toshli, who also don't affect the board when they're played. Actually, Toshli could, in theory, with a spare part later on,
Yeah, but like,
but
yeah.
you know what I mean. Like they all fit into the slow value 6 drops, and Iron Juggernaut just doesn't feel like he has enough direct value that's reliable.
Yeah, so again, it's a Mexican call. It might, I mean, this card might turn out really good.
In control
But
metagames, it's insane.
um, yeah, this card is really good against like Shaman, where the game typically goes quite long. Uh,
If there's a vitality totem, then Shaman disagrees with you.
yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, one thing to note is that say you play this card and your opponent has 20 cards left in their deck, um, like fatigue wars don't happen on turn 30 because decks do draw a lot of cards. So, um, if you play this card and the opponent has 20 cards left in their deck, are they going to draw 10 cards by the end of the game? Almost certainly.
If they're a Shaman, no.
Um,
Like,
that's a good point.
yeah, I mean they have card draw now, but it doesn't actually come from their deck.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of
So,
people have said
yeah.
Iron Juggernaut is really, really crazy, but it's, yeah.
The other problem is against Priest. Like, if you're going against Priest, and it's just like, there are going to be times where against Priest, it's like, oh my god, the 10 damage I needed. There's also going to be times when the Priest is just like, oh, a mine, and he just like, he's just like standing in the breeze, because he's still sitting at 30 life, because you're one of those.
Yeah,
And
it's like, oh, well, now when I hear it, now when I heal my face, it does something.
Now when my opponent Alex Strazes, it only does 5 damage, not 15.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's the other problem. If they draw it before you Alexstrasza, then it's a bit awkward. But,
Yeah, and
yeah, so
then
this card has some really good applications. Again, it's a meth call. We'll see how good it is.
it's a medical. I agree. We'll have to see. I mean, I am like on the fence about this one, and I think it is one of the overhyped cards of the set. Like even if it is good and playable, it's still overhyped because a lot of
Yeah.
people are hyping it up to be like the best card in the set and things like that, and I just don't see it. Anyway, on to Siege Engine, 5 mana 5/5 mech. Also, Warrior got 4 mechs. I just want to point this out.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Juggernaut's not
Um,
really a mech because you're not going to want to play Iron Juggernaut in a deck that's like.
It gets hit by Screwdriver. But anyway, Siege Engine. Whenever you gain armor, give this minion +1 attack. Now, this does end up with some weird situations where you're gonna have to choose to not armor up when it has 6 attack because otherwise it gets big game hunter.
That's actually a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah. Okay, so basically, you could think about this as a 5 mana 5/5 mech, because when you like the effect is not so crazy and threatening like the Frothing
It's actually
Berserker.
not because you take a
Bar-
tempo loss whenever you gain the armor.
Barring the edge case where you play like 2 Armor Smiths and then a Whirlwind or whatever. Like
Siege Engine OTK. Siege Engine with like 2 armor smiths on the board. Charge. Whirlwind.
right. So this card is not a Frothing Berserker. Most of the time, it's going to be a 5/5, and then if you leave it for a turn, it might grow to a 6/5 or maybe a 7/5 if there's a shield block in there somewhere.
Yay.
And so that's not completely unusable, because it can maybe trade up into some bigger stuff.
I mean, it's arena playable at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a 5 mana 5/5 mech, which is nothing to be sniffed at. If there is some kind of mid-rangey board control deck with the Screwjank Clunker that we're going to talk about in a minute, then maybe that's going to be enough. But it seems like there are better options in the 5 mana slot.
The other thing is, it's just like if you're in a situation where you're playing your Siege Engine, you kind of got to question like, is playing Siege Engine worth playing the Warrior for? Because at that point you're like comparing it to other 5-drops, and if you compare it to Priest, for example, like if you're making a mech deck in Warrior, you've got to think like, I'm playing Siege Engine. Is the Screwjank really good enough to justify this when I could just be playing upgraded Repair Bot?
Right.
Like, that's the other thing.
Yeah, I don't think Siege Engine is good enough, even in a mech deck. But it might be just because it's a mech.
Maybe. Now, on to Screwjank Clunker, arguably the best card they got. 4 mana 2/5 mech. Battlecry. Give a friendly mech +2/+2. This thing is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, so this card is basically a Houndmaster with a slightly different stat distribution.
On a better type. and you can also
Uh,
accelerate it
yeah,
with
it's a
Mech
mech. So
Warper.
like the obvious dream scenario is mech warfare, and then you could play a 3 mana Screwjack clunker and buff the mech
You
warfare.
say dream scenario, that's gonna happen a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a dream scenario, but it's not that outlandish. You could play a harvest golem on 3 and then buff it, or a spider tank that becomes a 5/6 and then kills
Or a random
yeses.
warbot that could still be around, or you top deck later. You can
I mean,
play
yeah.
it on
Warbots are really,
shredders.
really great size to buff with this because it becomes a 3/5.
Within
Um,
rage. Shredders, those shredders, they work. Like,
um, yeah, absolutely. So this card is really great. I mean, 2/5 is a bit of an issue because I mean, unlike Houndmaster doesn't have 3 health, which is great because it's a bit stickier. But 2 attack means that
it's
um,
not fantastic.
it's more likely to get run
It
over for
does
cheap.
mean
It's not
that
very
drawing
threatening.
drawing multiples turns from being
But
bad to
yeah,
really good.
during 2 Screwjack clunkers, you can buff the second Screwjack clunker with the first Screwjack clunker. The 5 health means it's more likely to have stuck around for that to happen, and it becomes a 4/7, which is a great size.
It's like, think about it
Um,
this way: if Houndmaster was a beast, you would play two.
oh yeah, I
Like
mean,
every time, because then
yeah.
they
So I
can
mean,
buff
okay,
each other.
this is the reason that you want to play Warrior Mech, even though Warrior Mech is kind of a bit awkward because Warrior doesn't have like as much card draw to support the mechs. It's got so many good class early minis already, but this card alone makes it worthwhile to maybe pursue that strategy.
Yeah, I agree there. The other thing is that if you're the whole Mech Warper Screwgiant Clunker opening, if your Mech Warper lives the turn, it's actually a good chance that if you play the Screwgiant Clunker on the Mech Warper, they just can't kill it. Period. Because if they couldn't kill the 2/3, they will not be able to kill that 4/5, and then you'll just get so far ahead that you just trample over them. Something else we forgot to mention was with Iron Juggernaut, it's not really a mech card because if you want to play a 6-drop mech, you play Sky Golem.
Yeah, and also like if you want to play yeah, because if you're playing like the mech deck, it's kind of like a more board controller style. You're trying to go for face finish the game reasonably quickly. And sorry.
It's fine.
Okay. I'm all right. You're trying to finish the game reasonably quickly, and so the chances that they'll draw their mine are a bit lower.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, Screwgiant Clunker, probably the best warrior card. Very, very good. On to Bouncing Blade, the weirdest deadly shot ever made, and there's a couple of them roaming around at the moment. 3 mana, epic, deal 1 damage to a random minion. Repeat until something dies. Now keep in mind that this includes your minions, which is both good and bad. And the other thing is that this is more like a deadly shot, and it kind of reads at first like an AoE, but then you actually put it into practice, and it's at its worst in an AoE situation, because as soon as it kills something, it kills nothing else. So it's more of a deadly shot than an AoE spell.
Yeah. Um.
This is also why Crush is pretty bad.
So yeah, this card's interesting. Like, I think you might play this as a one-of and warrior, just because like, so they play Ysera, you play the Bouncing Blade. There's nothing else on the board. It dies. They have like 2 giants, and you play the Bouncing Blade, and then one of them's almost dead, and the other one is dead.
So
Um,
7 damage to one, 8 damage to the other.
this card is always going to kill something, so it's never completely useless.
It's gonna hit a totem a lot. It is
And
actually at its worst against Shaman, which is not
oh,
good.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's unusual against Shaman. So it kind of depends on the meta again. Um, in a slower meta, in a slow control warrior deck, less likely to have stuff on the board. It's fairly bad.
I will say Warrior seems even worse against Shaman going into this, because Control Warrior seems to have more situational cards that are not good against Shaman, and the Mech Warrior relies too much on sticking things on the board that have like 3 or 2 life, and they just die to Shaman spells. So that seems like a really rough matchup.
Yeah. Although I think the more board control warrior might have a bit better matchup.
Maybe.
So we'll see. Um,
But Bouncing Blade, first of all, don't play it as 2, ever.
yeah,
That
this
will
card
feel
is too
terrible.
situational.
Yeah, you
To
can't play it as a 2
two.
of. The other thing
And it
is, if your opponent has an Nerubian Egg or Haunted Creeper, this is really
yeah.
annoying.
And it does kind of compete with execute and shield slam, but I think having that one extra hard removal is not awful.
Yep, I can agree with that.
A lot of people have talked about the synergy of this card with Acolyte and Armorsmith, but um, the problem is those guys are small minions that if your opponent has something,
Throw commanding shout in there while you're at it.
yeah, I mean the problem with that combo is that then your bouncing blade will kill your Acolyte instead of one of your opponent's minions, and even though you got three draws, two cards and three draws for 5 mana is pretty bad.
Six. That's
Six
just
mana.
really bad, yeah. And over 2 cards as well. Like, I'd rather just prep into sprint. But anyway, on to the Ogre Warmole. Now, the Ogre Warmole is a 3 mana 4/2 weapon. A weapon with the Ogre effect. Now, Ogre Warmole has a bit of a flavor foul thing on this for me, where the Ogres are supposed to be dumb. That's just why they have the Ogre effect. However, this is a weapon, which means that
When you hold the weapon, it makes you dumb.
yeah, when you pick up the weapon, it makes you really dumb. And that's actually what happens if you put this in your deck. It makes you really dumb.
So
Don't
you can
play it.
kind of think about maybe this card would be good in like an aggressive warrior deck where you don't care if it hits the face or their minion because it's all good to you. But then you're a warrior. You have Fiery War Axe, you have Death's Bite,
You
and
have Arcanite Reaper if you really want to go for the massive amount of weapons. You have Arathi Weaponsmith. Like, you have extra options already for extra weapons.
yeah, there are already good weapons that don't get to warrior because they have too many weapons.
Yep.
And this is even
It's not a good weapon.
worse than those.
And
So
it won't make it because they have good weapons. And in Arena,
yeah.
it's not fantastic. I mean, it kills things, but then it also just sometimes hits the face randomly.
Yeah.
It's not good. Anyway, last warrior card. The other kind of gem hidden in here is the Warbot. 1 mana, 1/3 mech with Enrage +1 attack. Now, as someone who has played with the original Shieldmaiden, not Shieldmaiden, what is it? The 1 mana 0/4 that I can never remember the name of. Yeah, Shieldbearer. That thing used to have Enrage 1 and it was absurdly broken. Like, it's amazing what Enrage 1 can do on a 0 attack minion, let alone on a 1 attack minion. The other thing is Warbot kills 2/3s. It trades with them.
Yeah. I mean, sort of. I mean, so yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of things to say about this card. It's pretty good on turn 1. You can kind of trade it into a Leper Gnome or a Clockwork Gnome or something like that, and then it becomes a 3/1, and then it's threatening something else.
Cool Taskmaster, 4 attack.
Yeah, you can Cruel Taskmaster it. It's 4 attack. That's not that bad. And crucially, it's a 1 mana mech, which is a huge deal because then you can play it for free with Mech Whopper. And that's really, really strong. And Warrior is the only class that gets a 1 mana mech.
Yeah, they're the only class in the game that can play 4 1 mana mechs in their deck.
Yeah, and that's really great. So this card, while not amazing, is like really, really solid. And
it's like if a 1-drop is too flashy, and like if you can talk about a 1-drop for ages and ages and ages, chances are it's too good, which is one of the alarm bells that goes off with Undertaker.
Yeah.
You can talk about Undertaker synergies for literally hours. But Warbot is just a solid minion. It trades with things. It's like, it trades. It does damage. It's a good card, and it works with mechs, and also it's pretty innocuous. So if it doesn't activate, chances are you can play on turn 1 into their nothing sometimes. And then you can just play your 2-drop, 3-drop, and then worst case scenario, if they're keeping on curve with you and just trading into your actual threats, because you had an extra 1-drop that survived their 1-drop, you can just play Screwjank on this thing.
Yeah. And also it's, 1 mana, so if you've got this awkward Screwjank sitting in your hand, you can play Screwjank on Warbot on turn 5, and that's pretty good.
It's like
because it has so much health compared to its attack, it's really good to buff with the Screwjank. So
it's like Web Spinner with Houndmaster, where sometimes you top deck it and then you just play them together.
Yeah. So, except instead of being a 3/3 like Web Spinner, it's a 3/6, 3/5.
3/5, and
which is really
instead
good.
of draw a card, you get Enrage, but then if it enrages, it becomes a 4/4. Nice 1-drop.
Yeah.
I mean, Screwjack is just insane though. So
The Yeah, the only concern is if you're running too many one drops in Warrior, you might not have enough card draw. But if you're playing the more ball control style, you get to play Battle Rage, and it might be good.
I would run this over Clockwork Gnome because it
Um,
kills Clockwork Gnomes and Leper Gnomes and kills Undertakers even if they activate because you just attack
yeah.
it once.
I mean, it may depend on the meta as well. Like,
What kind of meta are we talking about here? Like zero mages, zero druids, zero rogues?
the card is kind of vulnerable to like a priest because of the Nostril Cleric.
But then you have Fiery War Axe.
That's true.
And also, actually, no, Clockwork Gnome is worse against Nostril Cleric because it dies to it.
Yeah, all good points. I bet.
So,
So yeah,
one drops are just
Warbots.
bad against Nostril in general.
Yeah, one mana mechs are good. Warbots are solid. One mana mech is good.
And that is the last card in the entire set. The whole
So-
set is done. 120 or
Yeah.
so cards.
Our marathon is over, and now
Now we get to wait
we
for
can actually go
another.
play with the cards.
Now we get to wait for another 4 months before we get stuck doing this again.
It's been an immense pleasure doing this horrendous marathon with you, Jotto.
I did describe it as torture when I referred to who I was going to bring on. Like, it's just like,
I think,
who
you
should
know,
I torture this time?
It was fun for the first 4 or 5 hours.
It gets a bit
I
tedious
hope
by
the
the
viewers
sixth.
have enjoyed it just as much, if not more, than we have.
Yeah, I mean, have fun with the cards. I mean, they'll be out tonight. 2 in the morning on EU. They're like out now on NA, so I'm literally uploading this and then going to open my 3 release packs on NA and finishing my arena run. So that's a thing. But I'm pretty happy with Goblins and Gnomes. A lot of interesting things coming out of the set as far as Arena is now amazing. I really like Arena at the moment. They've done really well with
Yes.
it, and Constructed I think is going to change drastically.
Nax is out, guys.
Yeah,
Be ready.
Nax is out now. Nax is out like 4 months ago, and that was late. Goblins and Gnomes wasn't. So I'm happy about that. Blizzard have stepped up their game here. 4 times the cards, better release
Yeah.
schedule. They didn't release it like
Um,
in a way that broke the servers continuously.
Okay, so we've definitely been wrong about many of these cards
We've been right
because
about
it is
a lot
hard
of
to
them.
evaluate a card before we get to play with it. It's going to be really exciting testing out all these new decks, and I'm really looking forward to it.
We have been right on a lot of them. I can guarantee that though.
Oh, yes.
But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback or want to yell at us, put it in the comment section below. Thank you for joining me, Dapper.
Thank you, Jotto.
So this is Jotto and Dapper signing off for the final time.